hello. We've been doing some of these around the state, and it's kind of odd if I'm waxing poetically while we still have these covered. So I'm going to unveil. So, Cord, you do this, okay. And then this is why we're here. And we'll talk a little bit about why we're doing it, but I want to recognize with us today Northeast Florida Zone Secretary of State for Florida, Cord Bird. He's doing a great job. His primary responsibility when I appointed him was election integrity. And, Florida does the best elections now in the country. That used to not be true. And he's done a very good job on that. But then as we got closer to America 250, Florida State Department oversees all the culture and things that really go into this celebration. So he's had to spearhead the America 250. He's done a great job with it. We've been doing a lot all over the state already. We also have some of our state senators, Rusan Osgood, and from Jacksonville, Tracy Davis. I want to thank you all for being here. Where's the sheriff? Is the sheriff? Where's he at? Okay, thanks, Sheriff Hardwick. I know we got some county commissioners, and we're really excited for you guys to be here. So we're doing a lot on America 250. And, on the one hand, Florida wasn't one of the original 13 colonies. We say we were the 14th colony because, it was an involvement and there was a lot of history with what happened. But we need to be here in St. Augustine because this is the oldest city in the United States of America. Before Jamestown, before Plymouth Rock, before any of those in the 1500s, people came to St. Augustine. And so this is a really, really historic part of our country and, of course, the state of Florida. So we've been doing different things to highlight America 250. I was able to get a statue of George Washington loaned to us from Mount Vernon, and we put it in the Florida Capitol. A beautiful statue, and it's been there now for over a year, I think we had it, where we were doing that. We were just in the Florida Keys for Monroe County, and we did James Monroe. We did a nice statue there. He was basically responsible for bringing Florida into the United States of America as a territory and eventually paved the way for us to become a state later in the 1840s. So we've done that, and we've done a lot of different things. But one of the things we've said is it's not just about people that signed the Declaration of Independence or people that helped create the Constitution the following decade. We want to honor Americans throughout history who've exemplified that spirit of 1776 and those timeless ideals that are so meaningful even here today. And so with Frederick Douglass, first of all, there's history about why we're doing it in St. Augustine, that I'll get to in a minute. But just as somebody that was able to accomplish a lot, we've been 250 now this year. He's one of the top 5 orators in American history. I don't think there's a question about that. He was a great writer. Now, was he sent to boarding school and Harvard and all this stuff? No, he was a slave. And he had to teach himself, how to do all those things. And it's really a testament to grit and determination and prevailing against all odds that you would be able to reach the intellectual heights that he did with all the barriers that he faced. But he was, in his day, certainly somebody that people wanted to come out to see, and they did that in St. Augustine, which I'll say in a minute. His life was spent obviously fighting for freedom, leading in the years before the Civil War, leading opposition to slavery, and then in the years after that, he was appointed by presidents to serve in various different functions, but was always advocating first for the post-Civil War amendments, and then for civil rights legislation after that, and nobody was as powerful as he was in doing that. Now, it's interesting because when he became prominent initially fighting against slavery, there was a strain of the abolitionist movement that was like, this whole thing is rotten, the Constitution, all of that stuff. because obviously when America was founded, there had been slavery here for 150 years. Even though many founders opposed it, others in the southern states supported it. And the Constitution didn't outright abolish it. And so that was a view. Now, Abraham Lincoln did not share that view, but that was a view that a lot of them had. And Douglass initially had that view, and he was very forceful with it. But then as he studied it, as he became, he started interacting with Lincoln, all these people, he changed his position on that. And he said, basically, what the Constitution did was put in a process that would lead to slavery's elimination. And he really believed that most of the founding fathers wanted to see that. And so he highlighted the portions of the Constitution that were protecting liberty, that were restraining government. And he became a very strong spokesperson for all of those different things. And so he gave a famous speech where he started articulating all these things. He even went overseas and was doing this. I think he was in Scotland talking about why the Constitution was something that needed to be upheld. So that was a major intellectual point, because I think it goes to, and he was very consistent with Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln's position was the Declaration of Independence says what it says. It says we're endowed by God with inalienable rights. We're not because of the government. These are natural rights. Government, duly constituted, protects those rights. And so he viewed slavery as an infringement on that original covenant with American independence. He thought the Constitution was a compromise, but ultimately designed to ratify the Declaration of Independence, even though they weren't able to eliminate it right at that time. So Lincoln was very positive about that, and so was Douglass was very positive about it. And then obviously, as you had the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, people like Lincoln and Douglass would have said, that's just confirming what the Declaration of Independence intended all along, that people are treated as individuals and that their rights are respected. And, there was a bumpy road with a lot of this. I mean, the Supreme Court, rendered the Dred Scott decision, which is a really bad decision and one of the worst to this day. Lincoln attacked it. Frederick Douglass attacked it. Those amendments really corrected that and then put that place in process. And so, but that obviously was only part of it. There was many fights that happened. There was kind of a commitment at the time for civil rights and some of these things. You had Reconstruction, but then, there was a breakdown of this. And so a lot of these battles became really strong, and some of them obviously took many, many decades in many parts of the country. So Douglass was always out there preaching the truth, always standing for rights of individuals regardless of race. And he would go around the country and he would speak. And so he would do like a train. So he was in the late 1880s. He's on a train. He comes down. He originally stops in Jacksonville. He had 2,000 people at a train stop to hear him speak in 1889. I mean, you couldn't get 2,000 people for almost anyone to come, maybe the president, maybe a few others, but that's a lot of people. Now that would be a lot of people. Then, can you imagine 2,000 people on horse and buggy or walking, crowding this train station to be able to watch him speak? And if you think about it, at the time, that was about 10% of the population of the city. So today, you would need 100,000 people to show up to represent the same amount of folks. Now, he also then came down to St. Augustine a couple days later, and he delivered a speech right around the corner from here at the Genevar Opera House, which used to stand on St. George Street. It was so impactful that the crowd rose and impromptu just started singing the national anthem. And so I've given a lot of speeches. It's hard to get people to get up and start singing when you're done. So that takes some skill. And so we've placed this statue here in the Plaza de la Constitución, which sits at the center of this historic city. This is a plaza that's been in use since the 1500s. And today on the site where goods and other commodities were once traded at market, visitors can enjoy the plaza and the many events hosted year-round. You know, we have very historic things. You know, our National Guard is right around the corner from here. We actually hosted the National Guard Symposium. So you have all the states come. And Massachusetts would always say that they have the oldest militia, which, you know, of the original 13 colonies, that's true. But they were doing militia drills here in the 1500s. And so we actually, St. Augustine has the oldest militia, drilling militia, and the fulfillment of that is right down the street here with our National Guard. So there's so many things that are so historic. Obviously, we have Flagler College, Ponce de Leon Hotel, and Frederick Douglass said that was one of the as good of any hotel as he saw in Europe right here in St. Augustine. So I think that, one, having Frederick Douglass here is a memorial to a very historic time in our nation's history. His speech here, as well as in Jacksonville, very impactful on the community at the time. And obviously, he was fighting for liberty. He was fighting for the principles that we're celebrating on July 4th, 250 years later. And the fight for that is always something that you got to do. Our founding fathers understood you could have a constitution, a declaration, great. They don't run on autopilot. Every generation has to fight for those. And you got to be good stewards of liberty. And you got to work to make sure that liberty's realized. And so Frederick Douglass did that very powerfully, very, very astutely. And to be able to overcome what he overcame, you know, some of us in life, you know, you deal with the modern, you know, inconveniences somehow. And there's issues. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of issues people deal with. But I think all of us would probably have more difficulty reaching the heights he did if you had to start with where he started with all the inhibitions that were put in his way. So that just shows you, you know, the human spirit really is powerful. And if you're fighting for the right things, I really do believe God blesses you. And I think when he was fighting for that sacred fire, to carry on the torch of the sacred fire of liberty, I do think he was doing God's work. So I'm excited to be able to have been a part of putting Frederick Douglass here, particularly for young people. They're going to be able to come and see and learn about Frederick Douglass. And I think they'll learn a lot about freedom and equality, and that's really, really significant. So we have the signage, which talks about some of the things with his biography, talks about him being an abolitionist, talks about Frederick Douglass being in Florida at the time. I mean, we weren't a state for very long, maybe 40 years at that point when he was here, and what he was able to do. But he liked this. He spoke very positively about St. Augustine, and now forever his visit here will be remembered. So thank you to Cord, Department of State, for getting this done. And I know we're going to hear from Cord, and we're going to hear from our friend, the Senator, in a minute. So come on, Cord.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you to our host, the City of St. Augustine, Mayor Sykes-Klein. You're always such a gracious host and always so cooperative with the Department of Historical Resources. So thank you for putting this together, and the City Council members and County Commissioners that are with us today. Thank you to my former colleagues in the Florida Legislature. Thank you for being here. And this is really an exciting event. I live up in Neptune Beach, and to have this statue here in North Florida, I think, is very significant. You know, the governor mentioned children, and one of the things that we're doing as part of America 250, this is really about our generation, the adults, teaching the younger children. And in preparation for today, I pulled off I have at home the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and I started perusing it, and the governor is absolutely right. For this man who was born into slavery, whose mother was taken from him, he says he doesn't really have much memory of her other than sneaking in at night to try to lay down with him. The obstacles that were presented before him and what he was able to do, while he was not a founder, it is significant that we are honoring him. You know, he had every reason. Frederick Douglass had every reason to oppose the Declaration, to oppose the Constitution, to oppose the founding, and he did for part of his life. But from 1851 onward, and for the rest of his life, Douglass supported the Constitution as a foundational instrument of liberty. He actually referred to the Constitution as the glorious liberty document, which guaranteed the rights of all liberties of all Americans. And he fought not only to end slavery, but also for voting rights and to ensure the voice of every citizen of our republic mattered. The governor went over why St. Augustine, why the significance of this spot, because in 1889 he carried this message to Florida. He was in Jacksonville, spoke to 2,000, and then came to St. Augustine and delivered that same message. And so today we honor him not just as a figure in a textbook, but as a man who dedicated his life to our founding principles. And the governor noted, and it's so important, that he was a leading intellect and orator of his day. And while we cannot hear him speak, we can reflect upon his words, which are as relevant today as they were in 1889. And so this is really part of an entire year-long celebration. And I've looked around, Governor, because we do like to do everything bigger and better in Florida. And I don't think there's another state in the country that is doing more than we are to celebrate our founding and Florida history every single day. On America Florida 250 FL, we're putting out information, we're holding events. Last week we had the duel at Daytona. So I would encourage everybody to follow us on social media, come to our website, come to these events, share the stories. We have such an amazing history to tell. We are the 14th colony. That's how we're billing ourselves. And yes, Florida's just such a great place to live, and it's just really exciting to be here today, to be able to celebrate the life of a great American in Frederick Douglass, to do it here in St. Augustine, and to be with all of y'all at this important event. So thank you, Governor. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Okay, and then representing the Tampa Bay area, a friend of mine, he's a really, really good legislator, works with people regardless of party, and is very effective, and you've gotten a lot done. I've helped you get a lot done, but you have gotten a lot done, my man, so come on up, Darrell Roussan.
Good afternoon. You have heard the history from the governor and our Secretary of State. But let me put context to the text. Frederick Douglass plowed the ground for freedom. He escaped oppression for freedom. Today we reap the harvest of his work. Today we memorialize for all generations to come the significance of his life, the significance of his work. History matters, and this is a memorial of a great man whose history is fighting and escaping oppression. We in the free state of Florida celebrate freedom. History connects generations and gives context to text. On behalf of the Florida Legislative Black Caucus and my colleagues who are with me today, Senator Osgood and Senator from Jacksonville, Tracy Davis, who I think wants to come up and say a word of congratulations, but we're just happy to be here today to support this effort. Tracy?
You're going to mention the museum? I can. Hello, everyone. How are you? Isn't this exciting? I am State Senator Tracy Davis from Jacksonville, your next door neighbor, and this is so exciting. The celebration of Frederick Douglass, and having this martyr, this statue sitting here in the center of St. Augustine, it can't be a better day than this. Just thanking everyone, and to thank everyone for coming out to help us with this honor, but even more so with the leadership in St. Augustine, for us to be able to have this and for people to come from all over. We were just talking as we were flying over about the beauty that St. Augustine gives us, and especially for me and others during the Christmas holidays, but you all are busy all the time. But, it's just not this statue and this memorial that we have in the heart of the city. It's also the Florida Historic Black Museum that's coming your way. And our governor helped us with dollars and cents, and he's going to keep doing that. So we're excited about that as well. We're doing some work in the House and the Senate to make sure there is a committee and task force ready to get that going. But I know as long as this governor is in place, and as long as he has St. Augustine in his heart, whether he's the governor or not, he's going to continue to help us with that. So thank you all again for being here. This is so exciting, right? 250 years, right? Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got, like I always say, every time we do these events, we've got more irons in the fire, so there'll be other things coming out. But I really am glad that we've decided to not just highlight people that were actually a part of America 250, and they deserve credit. I mean, they were great leaders, but people that have really fought for and exemplified those ideals. And this guy right here was a big warrior for freedom and was, one of the most impressive statesmen in American history when it's all said and done. So congratulations to the memory of Frederick Douglass. You're going to always have a place in the free state of Florida, in the great city of St. Augustine. Okay, do we have any questions? Yes. I'm not aware of that. That's not involving anyone in my staff, right? Okay, yeah. No, yeah, I'm not aware, but I'll look into it. Yep. We'll get it done one way or another. We'll get it done. I mean, this was years ago. We agreed to do this museum. We've put money for it. I think everyone wants to see it done, or at least certainly everyone up here wants to see it done. And we've done a lot of different museums around the state for different causes, and justifiably so. But I think this is a good cause, and I think we need to get it done. Great. So remember a year ago, nobody was talking about property tax until, well, no, the people were talking about it, but the elected officials weren't until we started talking about it. And because it's an issue that's affecting a lot of people, and it's a way to give people relief from costs that are tough, right? I mean, look where groceries were, and this is nationwide. This is not just St. Augustine, in 2020 compared to now. Look at some of these other things. Well, the one thing government controls is tax, right? And so if we can do the tax, then that's going to be the best thing we can do, most assuredly. So, I applaud the House for getting into this fight. I think they've got a lot of folks that brought forth a lot of good ideas. But what I've also said, and I said from the beginning, I didn't see this necessarily happening in this regular session. And I think the Senate agrees with that. We're going to be coming back. There's going to be opportunities to do it. I think you got to do it right. And part of it is the numbers and showing that works. And we've been working. I mean, we're not just doing this off the back of a napkin. I mean, we'll have people studying this. We're going to have analysis. We're going to have stuff that's going to be very meaningful for people. We're going to show that this is something, because half the people just want it. You put that on the ballot, they're going to vote for it, right? But then there's some people that they want it, but they want to make sure that this is something that's thought out, and it is. But then you also have the art of these ballot initiatives. Voters are going to read it. Are they going to like what they see or not? Just from an impression, right? And what I found is you can't just have a bureaucrat write that there's an art to it, that you have to know how that language is going to do. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it, but the reality is I think the fact that the House has done something is a good sign. I think it shows that they are listening to their constituents and that they want to get something done. I'm also working with the Senate, and I have been out this whole time, so we will get something done where you're going to have something on the ballot. That will happen. I think it's going to be historic, and I think it's going to be something that a lot of people are going to support. But I remind people, when you talk about this, in 2019, like when I first took office, so all the property tax revenue goes to local governments. There was $32 billion collected for property tax revenue throughout all local governments in the state of Florida. Fast forward 7 years, it's now $60 billion. And so the question is yes, we've had inflation. Yes, we've had population growth. Heck, throw in a few percent increase just for kicks, right? Fine. That doesn't get you close to $60 billion. So I think people are being overtaxed. I think homeowners think they're being overtaxed. I think it's affecting the housing market. I think there are people, and interest rates have an impact, but I think there are people who, could potentially move, who are not doing it because of the tax implications. You do have an ability to transfer part of the homestead exemption, but that was never indexed for inflation. And so now someone that bought a house 30 years ago, the value nominally is way higher than what it was when you bought it in most parts of Florida. So it still creates a disincentive, and there's a lot of issues there. So I just think at the end of the day, going from 32 to 60, that's more than how much that revenue should be growing. We have to stand for taxpayers. So I'm very confident. And I also said, too, I don't care about the second homes or the Airbnbs, these investment. I want to do it for Florida residents and their primary home. That's what I want to focus on. That's only a third of all the property tax in the whole state. 2/3 is the commercial and the other stuff as it is. So I'm confident you can do something really historic, and we're going to continue to work through that. So I would just say stay tuned. I would not anticipate this happening in the regular session. That was never our plan on this, and there's reasons for that. But it's going to get done, and you guys are going to be able to go to the polls and be able to vote something that's really, really meaningful. I just think at the end of the day, your home is your castle. You either own it or you don't, right? And if you have to keep paying tax to the government your whole life just to live on your own property, do you really own it then if they can take it back from you if you don't pay? And I think a lot of people look at that and they say, yeah, you know what? We really should own the home. I also look at these younger people. The home values have gone up, and that goes up and down, and maybe it'll come down. It probably will, but still, they're coming in, and their tax is way higher than someone in the same neighborhood that has owned the home for 20 years. Not even close. And that's not something that's going to help the younger generation really do well going forward. So, and people ask me, oh, well, how is this county as rural going to afford this or that? First of all, I think everyone is getting way more revenue than they should be based on the numbers I cited. But I put in my budget a provision recurring to take all 32 rural counties and replace the revenue from the property tax. How could you oppose that at that point? I mean, you're a rural, your people get a massive tax exclusion, and then you still get money from the state to be able to backfill all this stuff? That sounds like a pretty doggone good deal to me. So we're going to make sure that people see all that and that it's something that's really positive.
Governor, bouncing off of that, do you have any other plans to address affordability here in Florida when it comes to, those housing costs or groceries?
Well, so the number one thing we can do is the property tax relief. Because if you're paying, if you go from paying $2,500 a year to zero, that's the biggest tax cut you could possibly have for a working family. Not even, you think about New York City, the mayor. He ran on affordability, and now he's trying to jack up property taxes. How does that make it more affordable? You're going to raise property taxes on cops and firefighters? I mean, no, it doesn't work. So that's the number one thing we can do. I would also note we have been highlighting through our Office of Insurance Regulation the approvals for rate reductions for auto and homeowners insurance. And this is something that's really significant. So last month, they were able to announce the first ever reduction for citizens' property insurance in recent memory. I don't think anyone can remember a reduction. So you now have, on average, 8% statewide. It's 15% in southern Florida, in Miami-Dade and Broward, somewhere in that range. And that is going to impact hundreds of thousands of policyholders. You also have, we're going to have more news on some of the other companies that are going to file for reductions, I think, coming up pretty soon. Then you have auto insurance. You have reductions from Progressive, USAA, State Farm, all of that. That's all because of the reforms that we did several years ago, and those have now really impacted the market. So that's not something we control directly, right? The state government does not set your auto insurance, but it's a private market. But if you could do things like we did to make the market better so more people come in and consumers have more options, well, that's great too, because the number one thing that's gone up nationwide is insurance, health insurance, auto, and home. Now, the health insurance, the feds have taken that over, and that's caused it to go dramatically more expensive. I think it's very difficult with health insurance, what's gone on. I would do whatever we could there, but the reality is the federal government has kind of taken that field over. But on the auto and the home, what you're seeing in Florida is positive movement. And a lot of people said that wasn't even possible several years ago. What I would tell Floridians on the auto insurance, if you have a policy and they send you a renewal, they may not have the rate where they may try to send you the same renewal. Look at other options, because what I've found is people have told me, hey, you know, some company announced a reduction and then mine didn't go down. And I was like, did you shop around? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, shop around and let me know. Then they say, oh yeah, I saved a few $100s. I was like, okay, well then that. So it may be that what you get offered is just the continuation, and if you shop around, then you'll be able to get a reduction. But what I can tell you is the filings that are going into the state insurance agency are for decreases for auto insurance. And that's not been true in a long time. And, you know, we have a problem in Florida. You know, it's not as bad here, but you go to different parts of the state, you know, it's a tough driving situation. You know, you've got a mix of daredevils, we got elderly, we got this, we got that, and it just is what it is. Like, there's not an easy fix for that. So we've always had these issues. Now I think with the reforms, it's paved the way for some positive, and people are starting to see that. Now, what else can you do with some of this? Be careful on doing some things that are ultimately going to raise the costs, right? Sometimes government will have proposals to subsidize, and they may subsidize this person or that person, but the net result is it drives the cost of everything up. So I certainly wouldn't want to do that. I think you are going to see the cost of homes. I think you're going to see some of it come down, and the reason is homes aren't really selling. This is true nationwide. They're not selling. And why is that? And I think it's because buyers don't want to pay those prices right now. Even though interest rates have come down, they're not as down as they were 3 years ago, but they've come down for year over year. That's pretty significantly. I think it's under 6%. It was, 6.8 or whatever it was. But I think the issue is the COVID boom in housing. I think people are like not willing to pay COVID prices right now. There was a lot of money floating around then, as you remember. So I think you're going to start to see something's got to give. Either people got to start making a lot more, or the prices are going to have to come down. But what you don't want to do is have government try to manipulate that, because when government does, it ends up creating a whole bunch of problems going forward. But if you take the positive movement in insurance, and if you get this property tax, I would say those would be the two biggest things that can really make a difference in the lives of Floridians. One, legislation only has a tangential role in, right, on the insurance market. We don't control it. The other, taxes, we the people control this through our state constitution. And so if you don't like it, you have the ability to 100% change it in your favor. And that's what we're going to be looking to do in November. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, we've been very strong on a number of things with education. America 250 was an easy outgrowth from us because we launched civics initiatives my first year as governor. We now have the largest speech and debate initiative in the United States of America. We're going to be having our competition in the spring at New College in Sarasota, and we're going to have probably 500 or 600 contestants in this competition, which is extraordinary. Every county in Florida, all school districts, are participating in our civics and debate initiative, and it's I think it's really set the tone for the country. We've also done a program where teachers get a $3,000 bonus if they complete the civics education course for teachers. And it's massive instruction, some of the best scholars in the country, and they're getting something that unfortunately has gotten lost in so much of higher education, where they don't focus on kind of the classic building blocks of the America Republic, but also even just Western civilization. So we've done that. It's been really good. We've also been very strong in higher education, promoting continued civics engagement in higher education. You know, we've also done, I've worked with Darrell and the senators, I was the first governor to provide support for Florida's HBCUs. We've done a lot for HBCUs. You know, I used to have Bethune-Cookman in my congressional district. When you had the shooting at Edwin Waters, we did the security for them and beefed up the security, as well as other HBCUs. And then obviously, you know, we've done a lot for FAMU, which is our state institution. Most of these other HBCUs are private. But part of the reason we want to do that is because we believe that they represent an important part of Florida's history and culture. And we want to make sure that that continues into the future. Now, Frederick Douglass, I think in every lesson plan or standards, I mean, this is something that's being taught, or certainly should be taught. If your teacher's not teaching you about that, then call Stasi Kamoutsis, the Commissioner of Education, and we will rectify that very quickly. Well, it's not really, I don't really view it that way. I mean, your local taxes are done locally. They don't go to other counties. We're talking about, you know, we're running massive surpluses in Florida. You know, when I became governor till now, we've almost quadrupled the state's rainy day fund. In fact, we maxed it out last year. We weren't allowed to put any more into the rainy day fund. If you look at the state's history, 180 years as a state, take all the debt that was accumulated. When I became governor, total that up, we've retired 50% of the state's historic debt just since I've been governor. We have a surplus in reserves. We have in addition to the rainy day fund, we've got trust fund surpluses. We've got a lot of opportunities. And we've kept the budget basically constant. This will be the fourth year in a row where we've had basically a constant budget. We've had very little change in the overall budget. We're doing big things for Florida within that, but we're keeping it in a very tight top line. So always within the same frame, the same kind of, you know, 40 to 40 yard lines. New York State has millions fewer people than we do. Their budget's over twice the size of our budget. We're one of the lowest tax states at the state level, if not the lowest in the United States. So that surplus money that's there is not people from Duval sending money to people in Madison County. That's money that's coming in, a lot of it from people that aren't even Florida residents. You know, we had 152 million visitors last year. We set another tourism record. What's wrong with enjoying that they're contributing to the kitty in a big way? Because they pay sales tax, they pay these other taxes. That relieves the burden of Floridians. And in fact, if you had the same level of services at the state level and we didn't have tourism, that would be thousands of dollars more per family in Florida. So you don't want to do that. So that's money that's being generated because of Florida's economy and because of the environment we've created. So to be able to backfill fiscally constrained, and I'm also willing to help out other counties. Let's just be clear, and we'll talk more about that, you know, as we get closer. But if you look at like a Miami-Dade, you know, they have so many options. They've got people, they've got wealthy people from Brazil buying homes. They've got people visiting nonstop. That's not the same as Hamilton County in North Florida. It's just a different economic base. So it's a reality that there's differences here, and that I want to make sure that this works for everybody. And I think it will work for everybody. But just think about it. Even if you didn't like, oh, you're giving these local governments support on the back end, if that's what gets it passed, then why wouldn't you want to make it work, right? I mean, I want to make it work. It's just like when they did the thing in the 70s in California. They did the big property tax overhaul. They provided money to the local governments, and what happened was, after a few years, they were still taking in revenue just from different sources. And I think that's what you'd see here. All the non-homestead, those values have continued to go up, and I think it'll all work out very, very positively in the end. It's a little harder for the counties that are a little bit more rural and they don't have as strong as economic base. You know, Jacksonville, they've got all these Fortune 500 companies that have a foothold there now. Miami is the gateway to the Americas. All these people, you see all these people from California are moving to Miami, including the founders of some of these companies like Google and Meta, and that's all happening great for them. But that's not the same everywhere in the state of Florida. So recognizing that, I think, is a have fun, guys. Enjoy. Okay. I couldn't get elected in New Jersey, so. All right, well, thanks, everybody, for being here. We're really excited about this, and please come up here and enjoy and look at the great statue. Photos here? Okay.
So we'll get one with you guys first. I'm going to do a photo with just the senators first, and then I'll have you guys jump in.
Do you want me to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, you want to just move it that way? Thank you. Got it? Yep. We're going to do one photo with the senators real quick, and then we'll do the city, and then we'll do the county.
Big smile right here. Can we slide over just one scoot over so I can get you from behind the pole?